when I'm walking down the street.
I do want to say to Doni and many of you in this room that over a very long career in this city, all of you have helped me and my colleagues tell the truth and to try to tell.
I may not look like you and you me, but
my head up.
I'm South Carolina, so I just
got it.
What does this event mean to you, Miss Peggy Morris?
Oh, my heart.
Happy 20th anniversary.
My heart is about loving up on my sisters. Do you know what it feels like to have your sisters in the room? John.
And dare to be different and unique. I'm gonna be the best me I can be by letting His glory shine through. I am beautiful, I am blessed, but not just what you see in the flesh. I'm free from people, free from myself. There's a
the doctor lived next door to the janitor, to the reverend, and the lawyer. We were together. Now we get so high and mighty that you create stress for your society because you don't like poor black folks either. That's a health problem. Get yourself together so I can stop being taking care of geriatric people and get back to pediatrics. I thank you, Doni, for all you've done. Let's keep doing it for all the more.
letting His glory shine through. Dare to be you, dare to be me, dare to be different and unique. I'm gonna be the best me I can be by letting His glory shine through. And I dare you, I dare you, I dare you to be you.
Good morning. First name's Doni, last name's Gloria. In it to win it for the long haul, baby. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Today is Friday, April the 5th, 2024. And we are glad to be here. Been a beautiful week. Thank the Lord for no more major tragedies, no more earth-shattering tragedies, at least this week in Baltimore. We do know there was an earthquake in other parts of the world and tornadoes in other states and all kinds of spring weather that has knocked people off their feet. But right here in Baltimore, we can claim victory, that we are at peace. There have been some challenges, no doubt, some crime, some things that have happened this week. A young person was killed Monday night. And while these things do ache our hearts, we're glad to be in the land of the living one more time. Yesterday, I had the distinct opportunity of hanging with Janet Arce of the Arce Foundation. And we went out to the site of the Key Bridge, and it was a monstrosity of a structure. It's surreal being right there, and something we've all watched on television over the past couple of weeks, to be right there. Janet and company were feeding some of the workers. These workers are working long hours, and Janet found that it was a good thing to go out and deliver some food. Thank you to Mr. Taco in the 4700 block of Eastern Avenue. They provided food for the people to eat. Also with us was Ven McCormick, one of our new partners, new advertisers, although I've known Ven actually since my days at Baltimore Polytechnic. So you're talking about 1979. But nonetheless, Ven has a treatment facility. As a matter of fact, let's go ahead and give him some New Life Recovery. Right there, they have a new hotel down on St. Paul Street. It was an old building per se, but a new business is in there, New Life Recovery. And they're helping homeless people. They're helping people who are suffering with addiction, whether it's drugs or whether it's alcohol. People are even suffering with gambling addiction. They say if you're borrowing money, you have an addiction. Nonetheless, the trip out to the bridge was sobering. It's one heck of a fall, 200 feet to see that up close. and then you face to see a bridge all the way through, and then you see where it's no more bridge. All of that is something for us to wrap our brains around. Our guest for this morning was to be Salima Siler Marriott. It appears as though maybe she's lost her way here. I don't know. But we're going to keep on for a few more minutes just to see, to make sure that we do our part. I know in college, they say if a professor has a master's degree, you give them 10 minutes. And if a professor has a PhD, you give them 15 minutes. And so we're going to claim the master's degree right now in the name of our God. But we hope that you are doing well. Do check out bemorenews.com. The news before the news, where we uncover the truth. We actually have a new story up by our new White House correspondent, Mr. Rodney C. Burris. He has a thing or two to say about civility and emotional intelligence. So do check out bemorenews.com, as well as the Northwest Voice newspaper, one of our strategic partners, Mr. Kenny Brown. He covers news in the northwest part of Baltimore County. That's where a preponderance of African Americans reside, right there between Catonsville and Pikesville. That northwest corridor, that's Liberty Road, that's Ricerstown Road. Many people have moved from West Baltimore out to the northwest over the past 55 years. Time waits for no one. Do again support our sponsors, Mr. Robert DeShield. If you need an attorney, his forte is navigating the city of Baltimore and the business community. Habitat for Humanity. Let me tell you, I don't know if you've ever been to Habitat's, what's it called? A Restore. They have furniture. If you need furniture, I got a bookcase out of there, and it was pretty big, pretty big, pretty strong too. I've gotten a dresser out of Habitat's Restore. I've been to the one out Washington Boulevard, but they have some great furniture. I know there's one on Fulton Avenue, but I've not been in there. Although it's right around the corner from me, I tend to go out to Washington Boulevard or to the one in Glen Burnie, because I like to travel and go see what other people have. I don't want to go around the corner. Leave that for somebody who can't get out there. Who else do we want to plug? Terra Cafe, Be More Next Phase Cafe, Mr. Tony Randall. Tony Randall is located at 112 East Lexington Street, and they've got the soul food for your soul, including the crab cakes, including the collard greens, and the cornbread. Don't forget that cornbread. Tony makes some mean cornbread down there. Some beautiful people who work there. Who else? Got some people running for office too. Councilman John Bullock is running. Also, he has an opponent, Venroy July. Let's not forget their name. We don't want Sean Giordano giving us a phone call. And oh yeah, if you're struggling with weight loss, or if you have some pain management challenges and you're looking to address that, check out Nia at Valentine Integrative Health. There it is right there. There's the number, 443-501-9201. I do want to put a plug in for Union Baptist Church and Reverend Mark Montgomery. Oh, she did join us. Good morning. I wondered if you were coming. We've been waiting for you. Can you hear us?
Yeah, we've been on, Barbara Sands and myself, for a long time, but we didn't hear, but we didn't click on into studio. We were waiting for it to pop up. We are tech novice. So I did send you an email to let you know we were on.
Did you? Well,
I did.
Well, I got to get your phone number. I haven't had your phone number. I got a 664 phone number for you and a 728 phone number for you.
But both of those are out, but I'm going to text you. I'm going to send an email because that's what I have for you. So you'll have everything.
Okay. Well, good morning to you, Delegate. What do I call you?
Call me Salima.
I find that no, I can't do that.
Why can't you?
Because you have always been my elder.
Okay, praise the Lord. I appreciate that. So you can call me.
I've never called you by your first name. You're my elder, and I will not. My parents raised me better than, and you've been delegate my whole life.
That's true, but I'm not delegate any longer, so you can use any handle but delegate.
Okay. Miss Salima, good morning to you. Peace and blessings.
Good morning. Or you can call me Mama Salima.
Mama Salima, I'm okay with that.
Okay, great.
I like that.
How have you been? I've been wonderful.
No, you're the only one that I see thus far.
Okay, she probably hasn't gone to, let me check in with her.
She's here.
Okay.
Good
She's
morning.
trying to call you on the phone.
Yes.
So let me just give the introduction. We're going to be talking about your new book, and congratulations, Bringing into Being Our Legacy. Salima Siler Marriott Gibbs was born and raised in segregated Baltimore. Let me just say, yes, it's segregated. This is the home of segregation, thanks to that mayor, J. Barry Mahou. Her loving and supportive nuclear family included her parents, Jesse and Cordie Siler, brothers Jesse Jr. and James, and a younger sister, Gloria. From being inspired by the spirit of her grandmother, Eliza Fosque, a midwife on the eastern shore of Virginia, to a lifetime of rewarding girlfriend and nurturing women relationships, as well as multiple challenges, emerged the adult activist. When her oldest child entered the public schools of New York City, Salima became a parent advocate. She later embraced multiple dimensions of activism that included national and international racial justice and Black feminism. And I'm glad you call it Black feminism because, well, we'll get there. Integrating activism in government, Salima Siler Marriott Gibbs was an elected delegate to the Maryland General Assembly for 16 years before being appointed Deputy Mayor of Community and Human Development of Baltimore City 2007 to 2010. Bringing into being our legacy is the story of Salima Siler Marriott Gibbs' life and the legacies of the 16 women who were the primary influencers of her evolving adult life. The book also shares a conceptualization of a Black feminist theory from the actions and thoughts of women activists of African ancestry, beginning with the transatlantic slave ships to the 21st century and the application of the theory to African American women activists. Without further ado, we present to you Salima Siler Marriott Gibbs.
Thank you so much, Doni, for that introduction, which gave people an idea what the book is about and what I am about. And joining me this morning is one of the 16 women who had an impact on influence in my life as an adult, particularly my activism. And so what I've done before, just before I introduce Barbara, I think that before Barbara comes on, I'll say just a sentence or two about the women who came before her. And as you heard in my introduction, Doni talked about my daughter who entered New York public school system, and she is Therese Marriott Thompson. She was the first woman who impacted my life and to becoming an activist, because it was when she entered the school system, I knew that I had to be involved in the school system if she would have the kind of education that I had moved to New York for, to some extent, that it still wasn't what I thought it could be. And so I became a parent advocate, and as a parent advocate, I met Viola Plummer. And Viola, it became, and as I did Monday, just want to take a moment because Viola transitioned to be with the ancestors in January. And I'd like to mention that and just take one moment of silence for Viola Plummer. Thank you much. And I needed to do, Viola is an extraordinary, has an extraordinary life. She has been one of the in the forefront of the Pan-African movement, and that's what she introduced me to. And she has been consistent in the struggle in New York City as well as Brooklyn. And I met her in Queens, where we were both parent advocates. She was also active at that time because, Doni, that was 1966. And my daughter was born in 61. I was totally disconnected to the activism, civil rights movement, which was at its peak. And but
Why? Why?
Well, because I had no incentive to be integrated. And I was very clear about that. I was raised in Cherry Hill. I lived in Cherry Hill from the time I was 5 years old.
Cherry Hill, Baltimore, Cherry Hill, New Jersey.
Cherry Hill, Baltimore, Southwest Peninsula, on the Patapsco River, across the Hanover Street Bridge. So I was born in West Baltimore. In fact, I was born in
Providence.
I'll give you the street, and you can tell me the community's name. I want to call
Division
it
Street.
1425 West Landville Street. That's where I was born. Harlem Park.
Oh, Harlem Park.
And from Harlem Park, we went one place for temporary housing until our housing was ready in Cherry Hill. So we moved.
How'd you get to East New York?
Through marriage. How did I get to New York?
Yeah, what'd you think? How did that work? I mean, New York ain't no Baltimore. It's chop. And you up in Brooklyn?
I was actually in Long Island City.
Oh, so that was a little more upper class than Brooklyn.
Now, I don't know about that, but Viola ultimately moved from Long Island City into Brooklyn. No, she didn't move into Brooklyn. She moved into St. Albans, still in Queens, but her activist base was in Brooklyn and Harlem. So
I love Brooklyn. My family's in Brooklyn, over by Brookdale Hospital.
Okay.
Brownsville, I think they call it.
Yes, perhaps. I don't know Brooklyn. I know a little bit about Queens. I lived in Jamaica. I lived in St. Albans. I lived in Jamaica. But the last place that I lived
Jamaica, Queens was upwardly mobile for Black people.
Yes, it was much. And that's what David, my deceased now husband, saw education from that point of view. And when he came to Morgan, he compared my education with his education. And he believed that the children in that time, our child, would have a better opportunity in New York. I did not disagree because I knew a little bit about New York system. But yet,
but they had education. They had education going on before Baltimore. New York. I mean, it's the North first of all, but New York was the first state to abolish slavery.
Yes.
First Black newspaper. So many firsts happened for Black people in New York. So, Baltimore, we're not that far behind, but I do find education emphasized more in New York City historically.
Yes, and I like to make a point, but it wasn't being emphasized as much as I thought it should be. If my child was going to maximize her advantages. So that's why I didn't just give her to the New York public school system. I became involved with the New York public school system as an advocate.
Who's got better food?
It depends.
That's a good answer. That's a good answer. That's a good answer because I love Jacobs up there on Malcolm X Boulevard. They got that jerk chicken buffet. Oh my God! Every time I'm going next Saturday straight to Jacobs. Yes, right. I am. We do the Black Wall Street Awards in New York. We've done Done it there for 11 years. Our first spot in New York was the United Nations.
Yes.
That was our first event in New York City at the UN.
That was the place where you belong.
We've also been to Brooklyn Borough Hall with now mayor. He was then borough president, forgive me, Eric Adams.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. So who's your friend here? Who's this BJ Sands lady? She looks real.
She's one of the women who influenced my life. And I'm going to jump over the others. We met my first year as an instructor at Morgan State University. She was with the University Without Walls, and she was also the director of the bachelor degree program for women in Jessup, Maryland. And
oh, my goodness. She worked with the Sisters Behind the Walls?
Yes, she did.
We salute you.
She planted that in me. She planted that in me. She introduced me not only to the women who were behind the walls, as you said, but she also introduced me to the women who were working for them. And so with that said, I'm going to let Barbara Sands have her say, and I'll come back later for questioning or to elaborate more about the book.
BJ Sands, how you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. How are you this morning?
I'm blessed by the best. No need to be stressed. Those are some fly glasses.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Where are you from?
I'm originally from Morganton, North Carolina.
Oh, I love North Carolina. Now, I got to tell you, Miss Salima, there's a difference between North Carolina and New York. New York, they'll come back into the room and be like, where the food at?
Right, you're right.
But down in North Carolina, they give you all the food, all the drink, all that you want. It's just one rule. It's just one rule, Big Sister Salima. One rule. Sunday morning.
Yeah, there you go.
You're going to church.
You're going to church.
All right. She's Reverend BJ Sands.
Reverend Sands, I must have been there. I went to Wilson, North Carolina for a family reunion. It was a wonderful time, and they shared food. But I got cousins in New York. I hope they're not listening, but they stingy with the food. I watched a New Yorker tell them, put some back in the pot. I was like, oh, my God. And they say Baltimore tougher than Brooklyn. No. What do you think of this empowerment of bringing into being our legacy? Now, I'll just blindly say our legacy. Does that include us brothers?
I would say it does.
Okay.
Because you are our brothers, you are our husbands, you're our mates. And so you are with us in the journey, in the struggle. And I know my husband is very supportive of things that I do and the things that I have done in the past relating to the struggle and for justice for women. And so I would say, yes, it includes you because you're so supportive. And we are thankful to have you. All of you in our lives. We realize that all of you are not supported, but those who are, we congratulate and are thankful to have you.
Well, Professor Sands, my mother and grandmothers would reach down from heaven and all kinds of slaps if I didn't act like I know. I was raised by good women and good men who understood the basic values. Don't lie, don't steal, honor your word, do your homework. Don't hurt nobody and don't let nobody hurt you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the chief things that I learned when I was coming up in North Carolina as a woman, as my father said to me, your word is your bond. Stick by your word. Speak up, speak out, be fair, love people, do good, and good will come back to you. And that was one of the things that I grew up with. I remember my father saying those things to me. And of course, my mother would echo it, but I was a daddy's girl. And so I hung with my daddy a lot. Learned a lot.
Professor Sands, did you foresee? I think of C. Dolores Tucker. Big Sister Salima had the opportunity to work with C. Dolores Tucker when Timothy Dean had a restaurant in a hotel and he was having some struggles. I had never met the iconic C. Dolores Tucker, but having grown up in Baltimore, I've seen a gangster or two. This lady was gangster. She walked up in the board meeting and shut it down.
Absolutely.
She stood up for Chef Timothy Dean and his establishment. And I don't know where I was going with that, but what is happening with us today, with our women today? BJ Sands, I don't know if you've seen social media. It is nothing to see a naked body. Oh my heavens.
Let me just say that that is not one of the things that I advocate. Of course, I believe people have the right to do what they want to do as long as it's not hurting anybody else. And I think they also have to always
their grandchildren. BJ Sands, when your grandchild see grandma with tattoos all down her back, your grandma.
No. I don't appreciate that. I don't appreciate those kind of things. I think that we shouldn't desecrate our bodies by tattoos and etc. That's my opinion. I'm a grandmother. I'm a great grandmother. I have 6 grandchildren and 3 great grandchildren. And so I want to make sure that we lift up morals and understand that there are things that we should and should not do. There are things that we want to do, which are not acceptable. They're not good for us, and they're not good for those coming after us. And that's one of the things that I am really a stickler for with my grandchildren. And my grandchildren are very much aware. You have to act this way around Granny. I don't know how they act away from me, but around me, they follow the rules. They do what they need to do.
I just heard on CNN where teachers feel like parents have left them hanging.
Well, I think that Becky
here is that the dialogue about the book, we may have had one notion in the beginning when we started writing, when the book was launched, but as we have been given opportunities to participate in dialogue, we can see something happening with the book beyond direct information. Wherein the women that you spoke of, Doni, may not come to hear this, but their child may come, or their neighbor's child may come, or their neighbor may come, because even though we see these women one way, they have circles that we do not know about, and some of those circles may be paying attention to the dialogue. And women in this book could have been them. That's Absolutely. The point. That's At right. any point, the women in this book, you heard me talk about my husband and I, and my moving to New York and us meeting at Morgan. But I became pregnant as a sophomore at Morgan. And it was because of his supportive family and my supportive family that I was actually able to graduate. Young women need to hear these stories and they can share them. Every young woman is not going to have an opportunity. In fact, my first reason for beginning to write the book had to do with my granddaughters, because I wanted my granddaughters to understand who their grandmother was. And it moved from my granddaughters to a larger community. And so therefore, we, men and women of African ancestry who are still on earth, must share our story. Because really every story that we have to share is going to help many, but it may even save someone's life. This is about us saying to our community, tell your story.
And And just to piggyback on that, not just to tell your story, but to be honest and open from the beginning. How did you know that you were involved in activism or in fairness and justice for women and other people? How did you know? Where did you start? And it made us who are contributors, who are co-authors of the book, begin to reflect back and think about our childhood. How did we get started? And once you begin to think about that, it was easy to see and notice the people who made the impact in your lives and how it pushed you on. And as I shared this book with a couple of young ladies in my church, one of the things in a church, I should say, one of the things that came across, one of the ladies shared with me, Reverend Sands, I wish I'd had this book 4 years ago because of an experience that she had, and she did not understand how to handle it. After reading the book, she said that she wanted to take this to younger women because younger women need to know that there were those women who are older, their grandparents and even great-grandparents, had some struggles, but where they were doing those struggles did not mean you had to stay there. But it did mean that you had to speak up and do something. You had to make a difference. And that
I want to put a pin in that right there, Professor Reverend Sands.
Yes.
As the father of a daughter who can be otherwise mild speaking, as the father of 2 granddaughters, and the son of a funeral director, and the son of a nurse, business owner, homeowner. That's my mother. One of the first homeowners in the 1500 block of Moreland Avenue in West Baltimore in 1952 or so. I want my daughters, I want my granddaughters to speak up. I have learned that boys and girls are socialized differently. And so even with this show, if I find a woman or female who's not as vocal, and I don't mean in any derogatory way, but I mean the ability to speak up and articulate just like this, then I'm going to push them. I'm going to encourage them. I'm going to support them because I want my daughter to know her voice, to find her voice and to use her voice, because I've heard the story of women not having a voice for too long.
Yes.
I'll tell you something else while I'm on that note. I've also heard many stories, and I don't know that you touch on this in this book, but the significance, you said you're a daddy's girl, Reverend.
Yes.
I found that there have been some horrible fathers who have done some egregious things to their daughters, and these women carry it with them today.
Yes.
Does the book speak to the abuse, including sexual abuse, of our women?
I think the book, there are some who share some stories, not necessarily sexual abuse, but show some stories where we have some instances where there has been some abuse, and also how they survived. See, that's the issue is about surviving this, not letting the incident or what has occurred to you stymie your life and stop you from achieving or doing what you need to do. Every negative impact, every negative experience that we have, there is some growth that will come out of that. But you can't let, our women need to know, our young women need to know that where you are today in the mess that you are is not where you are destined to be. It is a growing step. It is a stepping stone, if you will, but you're going to get beyond this, that you have to have faith. You have to.
I think she froze up there. Mama Salima, when I think about the work in the prisons, and we'll just take our screen until it comes back. But when I think of the work that's being done, oh, there she is. Come on, Reverend.
Yes.
When I think of the work that you have done in prisons, how often have you had to share a similar message You know, and let me just put it out there. America represents 5% of the world's population, but we have 25% of the world's inmates. 34% of black men, black women are the fastest growing demographic, and we as a people are only 13 to 15% of the population. Small percentage of the population, half of the people in prison. Small percentage of the population, half of the people in prison. I am troubled by that, and that's why this broadcast, we do as much as we can to bring attention to mass incarceration. And I've learned to not call people inmates. No. I've learned that when you, especially when you're talking about people coming home, there's a whole language. And people like Victor Pate, who we're going to be with in New York City next Saturday for a returning citizens panel, he always emphasizes the need for the proper language, because language governs thought.
Yes.
You were speaking about abuse of women. And so what I would like to say is abuse grows out of a society that is sexist. And so there's many forms of abuse. And so you talked about one of the most egregious forms. But the sexism that is so permeates our society is not divorced from the Black community. Mm-hmm. And so my experience of being discriminated against because I was a woman always took place in the Black community, because that's always has been the place that I have either worked, been an activist, and so in that is what I began to see that gave me the understanding of the feminist perspective. Because I was never, as I said earlier, you said, why were you not in the civil rights movement? Because I did not have the incentive to be integrated, even as a child. And I mentioned growing up in Cherry Hill kind of reinforced that. And so getting back to my thought is that my experiences in the community, in the church, not in the family. So what was so helpful to me is that I came from a family. I had a doting father, as Barbara did, but I also had a brother who was 9 years older than me. Mm. And he loved me unconditionally, and he became what you now know as a Head Start teacher. And my brother would tell me nearly every day, and they called me as a child, Dolly. Dolly, you are so smart. So I always say to people, when I got to school, I never knew and still don't know if Dolly is so smart. I only knew how smart people behaved, and that's how my brother wanted me to behave, and that's how I behaved throughout my educational experiences. Mm-hmm. And so this brother, who validated me in such a special way, he really is the rock of what emerged. There's many positive experiences in my life, but what you do when you enter school sets the stage for how teachers looked at you. So the teachers started looking at me as if I was smart, because I was always acting smart, and so forth and so on. But so to be confronted, and then my husband wasn't chauvinist, neither was his father. And so to move out of your family environment and enter into these environments with these chauvinist men, you just said, I'm not taking this, and begin to speak out about it. And then finally, I decided that I had to speak out publicly. And I took a lot of punishment for doing that. And that was in the early 80s in Baltimore City. Mm-hmm. You just were not to do it. I would do it quietly where I work or in the organizations that I was in. But I never took that mic and said, I'm going to organize women to address a political system in Baltimore that has kept women out to a large extent. They were,
I got to jump in here for a second, Mama Salima.
Sure.
As you give that backdrop, can you touch on the part of the introduction that speaks to Baltimore's segregation?
Yes. So I was raised in Cherry Hill. Now you may not understand this or know this, Doni, and other people may not either because they look at it differently. The reason that Cherry Hill was so necessary to be built in 1945 is because the migration from African Americans from the South had gotten so expanded that they were getting ready to cross Fulton Avenue. And that was a place that I grew up.
I do understand. My daddy told me.
Did not go to cross Fulton.
We couldn't live above North Avenue or west of Fulton.
Exactly. And so that's the Baltimore.
It was white. It was all white.
Say it again.
It was all white.
Absolutely. So that's the Baltimore that there were certain pockets that we could go beyond North Avenue up to Drew, but these were special pockets up to Drew Hill Park, but there was Linden Avenue that you couldn't go across. So that's the Baltimore that I grew up. All the schools were Black. When I got ready to go to junior high school, I had 3 or 4 options. And then in 1954, Supreme Court decision. I lived in Cherry Hill. I saw what happened to my friends who chose to go to Southern High School. The first to enter, so I saw the racism as a 14-year-old child. But I was then at Cherry Hill Junior High School, but I knew then, because I made a decision early in life, based on one of my early role models.
You didn't want to be with him no way.
I was going to go to Douglas High School. That was it.
And for those that don't know, that's the first Black high school, first high school that African Americans could attend in Baltimore.
Exactly.
So I got to share this bit of history with you that I've learned in time, and shameless self-promotion. I got 2 books. I Am Black Wall Street and Unapologetically Black. But I've learned about this mayor. He was mayor from 1907 to 1911. His name was J. Barry Mahou, and he is known as the father of segregation. J. Barry Mahou, don't worry, because we know that Black people have always been strong in Baltimore. We know, for instance, that prior to the Civil War, Baltimore had the largest population of free Blacks in the country. And so we've always been Baltimore strong in ways that others could not imagine. But this man named J. Barry Mahou, around 1910, they just finished Roland Park. And that was Baltimore's first suburban garden community. And the good white people in Roland Park did not want African Americans to be able to move into their suburban garden community. And many of them have not changed their mindset still today in 2024, because we know about the incident with Ho's Heights, founded by Grandison Ho. But there were 2 Black men who put foot in J. Barry Mahou's hind parts. Their names, they were brother-in-laws to my understanding, Ashby Hawkins, who was a Black lawyer, and another name you probably do know, George McMecken. And those 2, after which McMecken Street was named, they were the nemesis, if you will, to J. Barry Mahou. But that made so that the housing segregation laws that came about in 1910, where Blacks couldn't move into white neighborhoods and whites couldn't move into Black neighborhoods, it was replicated around the country. And that's why this place is the home of apartheid in America. A wicked place. But people like you, I remember first seeing you. You were one of the first women politicians that I personally came in contact with, Mama Salima. and you didn't play.
Praise the Lord.
And you help people who deserved your help, like Asan Giordano. I remember you being a big encourager of his through the years. And look at him now.
Mm-hmm. So proud.
That's your product.
Mm-hmm.
He learned. So did I.
And Antonio Hayes.
Antonio Hayes.
Mm-hmm.
Look at how far he's got more experience than some people twice his age in politics.
That's right. Brought him up from age 14.
It's because of you. That's why I don't play with politicians. They better deliver, or like Marion Barry said, vote them out.
It's true.
So, Professor Sands, Reverend Sands, where does the church fit into our legacy today? I was in Union Baptist Church. I've been visited some other churches, and I can only tell you that, my God, maybe the buildings were too big, but we are just not in church anymore. But they did have some beautiful music there. I love the music. Oh, the music was glorious.
Yes, yes. Well, one of the things that I am just excited over is the emergence of Zoom during this crisis that we've had with the illness for 3 or 4 years. One of the things that's happened is that we've become more familiar with worshiping at home, which means that the folk that come to church always leave somebody home. See, when I was coming up, you didn't have that option. You went out on Saturday night, didn't care what time you got in. You weren't going to church Sunday morning. That's no longer an option here now. It seems like the kids stay home. The kids are more free to make up their mind. And one of the things that we find in the book is how God has impacted, how the church and God has impacted the lives of so many people. Three of our authors, actually co-authors, are ministers, and we lift up highly the importance of the church and of the theology, the importance of God, and the importance that parents have to be parents. Parents want to be friends now. We've got to be parents of children, and we've got to lead, and we can only lead by doing, showing them the way. And sometimes now it seems like the kids are in leadership, not the parents. Even from kindergarten, the kids are very vocal. They let us know what they want to do. I'm one of the old grandmothers. I listen and I encourage. But you're going to church, you're going to do this, we're going to read the Bible, we're going to have prayer. Those are musts. And I try to continue to tell my children that you've got to show the children. My children have to show their children the way. We have to show them the way. And the church is changing tremendously. It's changing tremendously. It's too big buildings are too large. And I think now what we need to do is to get back to smaller groups and have deeper roots, and that we will make a difference in the community, a greater difference in the community, if we demonstrate what we are doing by the way we live and the way we treat each other. And Doni, this is a subject that I could talk about for the next 3 days. And so let me just stop there.
No, I got a question for you. I want to know what your thoughts of when my parents said to me very eloquently, I had to be about 7 when I first heard the words, I brought you in this world and I will take you out.
And what's wrong with the statement? What's wrong with that?
Me and you are on the same page, because
that's the statement. I mean, I ask my children. I can give you some telephone numbers. They've heard that as often as they've heard "I love you." That's just the way it is.
I salute you.
You have to have a firm hand. I believe that. And I was active in the civil rights movement as a young teenager in Morganton, North Carolina, in Burke County, sitting at the counters. And those things, you see, these things just don't come about. You grow up in them, and your parents have put some wisdom in your head. The community is letting you know, as Dr. Marriott has already already said her brothers let her know that she's smart. And that's one thing I think that might be a common thread if we ask these ladies in this book, because I know that was one of the things that my father said to me. You are smart and you got to be smart. And then he went a step further. And as long as you my daughter, you gonna be smart. I mean, that's what he said. And my mother was the one who would often say, you don't do what I do. Don't do what I tell you. I take you out. I brought you in and I'll take you out of this world. And that's a real statement. It's real. We brought up with it. It was real for me. No, I didn't think she would actually do anything like take me out, but I realized that it meant that I would get a spanking. And so I didn't want to spank it. So you do what you're supposed to do. And when you get used to doing what you're supposed to do, you keep on doing what you're supposed to do. When I was in the prison, in Jessup Women's Prison, and I came across young women who were in prison. They were like in the 10th, 11th, 12th grade, and young people, 24, 25, 26 women. And it was just it just broke my heart that and to hear their stories. And I brought those stories back to Dr. Marriott. And we would talk about them and think about, and she would give me some advice, being the social worker that she is and the sociologist that she is, would give me advice on what to say, how to handle this. And we kept going back and forth. And then she became more deeply entrenched in the prison reform, if you will, for women. And it just went on from there. So the point I'm making is the advocacy is not a one part of your life. It is your life. It's continuing. And it is demonstrated by these 16 women in this book. Each one of us have gone through some issues. We've had some troubles, but we have survived. And it's because of the strength, the struggle, the strength that you have, the strength that has been put in you by your parents. Amen. I wasn't allowed to be a child. I had to act right because I was the only child. I had to do right. I didn't have a choice. And so doing right meant speaking up for others, saying and teaching each other that we can play together. Here, take this. We can share. We can love each other. Take this piece of my peanut butter. You want a piece? Have a piece. You can have all of it. I'm saying it's a way of life. And women are coming into that now. Women are doing, this is a time for Black women. I mean, look on TV at all the Black women that you see. I'm just elated. And you have young Black women who are starting businesses. They are doing good. This is a time for Black women to speak out and to do what they know they must do.
Okay, Mama Salima, you got to tell me about Black feminism. We know what the other feminism is. Why do you put the Black handle on it? Because you don't identify with their feminism, that it did not include the struggles, the plight, the history, the historic contributions? Because my understanding is that Black women were right there in the feminist movement, but as America tells its story, they like to conveniently put us out of the story when we are the story. And we were here, many of us were here, many of us have indigenous roots. So more so than descendants of slavery, we could be descendants of prisoners of war.
So it is about a multifaceted approach. It is integrated. It takes into consideration that the Black struggle is primary, but it also takes in consideration a class struggle. It takes in consideration a gender struggle. And so these were the characteristics. See, the feminist theory, once I became a feminist, I thought a lot about feminist theory. And to get right to your point, I said I organized women in the 80s. And these women would dare not call themselves feminists, but they were doing and acting and behaving in a way that they were struggling against racism. They were struggling against sexism. They were struggling against classism, and they also had an international perspective. And so when I began to do the research for my dissertation that included a Black feminist theory, I went back to see what Black women were doing and what they were saying from the slave ships up until the time of my writings. And what I could see, if they didn't speak it, I could see it in their behaviors, I could see it in the way that they organized, that it was never just about being a woman. It was also about how being Black integrated with that. It was always a struggle about poverty. And even when you look at Sojourner Truth, and when you look at Harriet Tubman, you will see that in their life, as their lives evolve, they would take on these various aspects. All of the outstanding women of history, Black women of history, did not just focus on the fact that they were Black. They dealt with the fact that they were women. They dealt with the fact that there was poverty in our community, and we must fight from all of the fronts. So that's what became, because even when I was getting ready to do my research and looking for a feminist theory about Black women, the white women were saying Black women don't need their own theory. Whatever their theory is has to evolve into ours. And that's what made me say, I am not settling for that. I am going to develop one. And after I develop it, I'm going to see where Black women stand on it. And so the activists that we organized for an international conference in Baltimore in 1984 became the population. And as I said earlier, these women didn't consider themselves feminists. But when they were interviewed and responded to the questions, they were high, or their scores were high. And so you don't have to be called a Black feminist. A lot of these women call themselves womanists. And they call their theory womanism. And that's fine, as long as you understand that it's not just about being Black. It's not just about being woman. It is about a multiplicity of things. And they have a name for it. I'm skipping it right now. But once I did my dissertation, I became a legislator. And so I did not keep up with things. So part of the book, Bringing Into Being, it was not only bringing me into being, it was bringing women into being. It was also bringing in a philosophy, a theory that Black had been developed because of Black women. That began with our very beginnings. We were jumping off those slave ships rather than to become a slave. Right. And we were jumping off, all due respect, we were jumping off in larger numbers than the men.
Yes.
We were jumping off those slave ships. We said, we are not going to be enslaved. We'd rather die than to be enslaved. So that's where it began.
Mama Salima, I got to get this question in. And we also have to plug Georgia Gosley because she set this whole thing up. But before we get to that, I want to know from both of you, is this an era where we're seeing the emergence of a Black woman who has seen what her great-grandmother, her grandmother, her mother went through with chauvinistic negative men and are on a payback tip?
It's not about payback, but I'm going to get right to Georgia, and I think it'll explain it to you. Georgia, I met Georgia in 1982 when she was running for judge. And I met her because a group of interfaith women invited her to come in to consider supporting her. And the women decided, which I felt without any real reasoning, but what was going on is women were afraid. Well, I'm not going to say afraid. They had their, not these women, but women in general had their agenda, their own agendas. And often, in order for a woman to become empowered or have some degree of power, it came through men who were organized. So in this particular case, the women decided that they did not want to support George to be judge. And that was because I was in that group. I had to move out and organize women who I knew, some would just follow me, but I knew that they would support a woman who was running for judge and wanted to be the first judge. Mm-hmm. And so that's the role that Georgia played in my life. She gave me the incentive to speak to my thinking, which was feminist law, and knowing that when I spoke to it and when I began to organize, that there would be pushback. Mm-hmm. And so that's what she did. And then when it was time for me to run, she was right there, but she doesn't like a lot of meetings and this and that and the other. She just said, after a couple of weeks, Salima, I got the money. So when you run out of cash, just come down to my office and I'll give you whatever you need. And she stuck to that. She said, I don't want to come to no campaign committee meetings. Our best way of supporting you is give you the money. So when you run out, come to my office. And when I ran out, didn't abuse it. When I truly ran out, I went to office. She wrote that check.
Reverend Sands,
Yes.
Reverend Sands, Malcolm X said you cannot serve the people unless you love the people.
Yes.
Malcolm X also said that entertainers are not our leaders. In this day and time, when our Black entertainers are able to garner more media attention than anyone, do our entertainers, are they leaders? Do they have a responsibility? What is your 2024 take on the role and responsibility of our entertainers? Because so many, I mean, nowadays, in my day, if you called a woman a B, they were fighting words. But now, sisters are calling sisters B openly, and it's just an inverted pyramid where what used to be normal is now abnormal, and what used to be abnormal is now normal. Help me out, big sisters.
One of the things that I think is important is that the entertainers give back to the community. With all the communities, all the entertainers that we have, and all the money. And I just want to make this statement because it rubs me so wrong. And that is, somebody said that one of my daughters, as a matter of fact, said they were going to a Beyonce show. And I said, girl, you don't have no $200 to pay for no ticket. She fell out laughing and looked at me like I was crazy.
It's 700.
No, sugar, 15.
15.
That blew my mind. But I wanted to say that what we need to do, we have all these homeless people. We have people who are in need in this country. And it would seem like with all the entertainers, with all the millions of dollars that they're getting, that they could siphon some of that money into the community for the homeless. Are they responsible? Should they do something? Definitely. Are they doing enough? No, they're not. In my estimation, they are not. One of the things that we have to do is to give back. We have got to give back. Holding all this money, you just like the others. You're getting rich, but what about those under you? What about those that are coming? And some of them are your relatives that are in need of money. Now, I'm not talking about to live rich. I'm talking about to live, and yet you're not helping. So yes, the entertainers do need to give back. They do have a responsibility, but then all of us have a responsibility to pull each other up, to help the other one. That's what it's about. That's what this journey is about.
Mama Salima, we don't look at giving back. We're different African American today. We've been called peculiar, but you talked about poverty, and in the intro to the show, Dr. Michael Zolikoff says that we have a public health problem in the Black community. Yes. We don't like poor Black people. A well-dressed Black man will get to sit on the front row. The ushers will take him straight to the front. But if he comes in and he looks a little ragged, he got a little wine on his breath, they might not even let them sit in the church. And I thought the church was like a triage unit. It was like the emergency room for the spirit.
This is the impact of internalized oppression.
Mm-hmm.
The oppression that is in society, we are not divorced from it. And we internalize it and we behave in ways of our oppression. And the concept in dealing with, political theory is internalized oppression. Mm-hmm. And we always have to have a war against it. My children would tell me, my son told me often, Mommy, could you just be quiet and enjoy the movie? Because every time I saw something that was racist in the movie, I pointed it out. Yes. We would not let our children watch certain TV shows because we knew that they would internalize the racism of it. So you have to wage a war against internalized oppression. It's just like what you said, Doni. The words become what you think. And the words that we allow our children to hear on television when they are young, the movies that we allow them to look at without going with them and pointing out everything to them. I'm telling you, my child told me, Mommy, can you for once just be quiet and enjoy the movie? Because I kept pointing
Well, I'm with you. I'm with you. I had Professor Ron Nichols at Coppin when I finally went back to school, and he was our media professor of the very first class. Reverend Sands, he had us watch The Birth of a Nation by D.W. Griffith, the 1917 racist piece of trash that they insisted these stereotypes, the big lips, the wide eyes, the scared syndrome. And he wanted us to know in that very first class, you will never look at media again after this class. And that's why I've committed my life to media, to painting a more accurate picture. We have never been stepping face. Yeah, there were a couple of people that were snitches, but that's why I talk about in my book, Black Wall Street, the many Black Wall Streets that were around the country, not just in Tulsa, but in Richmond, in Durham, in Bronzeville, in Chicago, in Black Bottom, in Detroit, all throughout the state of Florida. They never told us, for instance, that if you escaped to Florida, you could get your freedom because Florida was owned by Spain until 1831. So any thoughts on us knowing our history?
We must know our history. For first, people don't know their history, you'll end up going back. We need to know our history. We need to take that and learn it, know it, teach it to our kids, and move forward. It's a springboard, our history. We got to know it and move forward on it. We've got to always alert our kids to the racist actions that we see. We got to explain it to them and move forward. And that's one of the things we don't do now. We've stopped doing that. Even our children don't teach that to their children. And that's as a rule. And I'm not saying everybody, but there's a significant number who just don't do it. We don't want to know. We don't want to remember what our history is. But I want to know every bit of it because I don't want it to reoccur. And if you don't know it and you're not watchful, the same thing can happen again.
And Doni, to add to that, that's why the book, Bringing Into Being Our Legacy, is not just about me. It's not just about the 16 women who were adults in my lifetime, but it deals with our history. And even though it's the history of Black women, the Black community is involved and integrated in that because these Black women who throughout our history were always working in the best interest of the Black community. So I slipped a lot of stuff in the book. I slipped the academic me in the book. I slipped the historical us in the book. And I slipped in the book the contemporary. And so you can get a little bit of all of that, and just a little more than just a little over 200 pages.
Yes, yes.
Because each of these women tell their story, or their story is told by their daughters. Each of the women. But there were a couple, as you may know, Betty Jean Murphy passed towards the ending of the writing of the book. Monkey Coley passed in the beginning. And some of the other women were in situations where they were not up to the writing, but their daughters took.
Didn't I see Sheila Dixon on the cover?
Absolutely. Yes. Now, you know the influence that Sheila had on my life. Tell
me about it.
She appointed me the deputy mayor of Baltimore City. And in that role, I was able to, as a social worker, I was able, first and foremost, she could see the skills that I had. She knew where she wanted to go as related to children and families. And so she appointed me in that position because of the work that I had done in Annapolis with children and families. And then to add to that, I was a social worker. And so all of those programs that would normally come under social work became a part of my portfolio. And I knew Sheila, and she's another magnificent person. When she was running the Bethel Food Co-op, the first in the nation, and she always gave, and she always supported others. She supported people like Howard P. Rollins. She supported unconditionally Kwesi Mfume. And she supported Antonio Hayes. And I could just go on talking about her. And when I was unsuccessful in my bid to become the senator of my district, there she was. And she said, Salima, this is something that I believe that you can do the way I want it done. And so I will always be there for Sheila Ann Dixon. Good. And whatever it is that her heart and God calls her to do. Plus, she's a woman of faith. Even before her politics, she shows up every first Sunday for communion. She's not a steward, she's a stewardess. And she's been in that role since John Bryant was the pastor. And she's still there.
I got to get this one political question in. No, I'm not going to ask you about the mayor's race, but I am going to say to you that today, April 2024, we've got a black governor, a black attorney general, a black treasurer. We have a black speaker of the house. We got a black mayor, a black city council president, a black comptroller, a black solicitor, a black state's attorney. Earlier in the broadcast, I mentioned the name of Marion Barry, who is known for helping to get that money, just like Maynard Jackson. Maynard Jackson said, you will not build this Hartsfield International Airport if you don't have Herman J. Russell and other black contractors at the table. And I'm not really going to touch the bridge, although we did have a black tugboat captain on the show just yesterday, and he would like to get some of that business that they are spreading around. But I want to know, given all that we have accomplished politically, has it translated into power for the black community?
Well, I would say, Doni, the way it has evolved and the point that you're making, we have just gotten to this point. This is new for us in terms of all the things that you have laid out. It should have been there before. But I would say part of it has to do with our loyalty to the Democratic Party.
Hello! Oh my God! Yes!
Yeah, that's what.
That's one Democratic city. They done closed the wrecks in my neighborhood. I ain't got no schools in my neighborhood. The schools ain't got no air. They ain't got no heat.
And in some cases, the Democratic Party has failed us. But in other cases, we as a community have not been willing to put into those people. Now, they don't feel that they are accountable. They don't come out and say it. They don't say, where were you when I needed you? And I had to go to somebody else to get the support that I needed. So it has not evolved correctly.
What do we have to do? What do we have to do since we're there? What must we do to get a Brandon Scott, a Nick Mosby, a Mary Washington, and whomever and whatever else to step up to the plate and bring back the bacon?
Hold them accountable. You know, when I was a legislator, I actually had to organize the families of incarcerated people in order to move the justice legislation. The members of the Black Caucus were not, now some of them were, but not many were not with me on those issues of justice. And some of them even went to Governor Glendening and told him that is not our agenda, that's Salima's agenda. When I was trying to get lifers out and Glendening was standing in the way. And so in order to move it, I knew I couldn't depend on them totally. And so I had to be a legislator and an organizer. And I had to let the family members of incarcerated people lead that organizational structure. So that's what we're dealing with. But the way to it is to hold them accountable. And you may have to start at the most basic level. But we have not evolved in an empowerment model. We have evolved into these leadership. I don't even call it.
One thing I love about you, you never act snotty as a legislator. You never look down your nose at me. I've never saw it, but we got some people getting an arm delegate senators, I'm senators so looking at it, folk, you know, the next thing you know, they locked up. they next thing you know, they're in all kinds of trouble. But they back then they couldn't come to Pennsylvania Avenue.
I understand. I got it. Yeah, I got it.
But as soon as they get in trouble, oh, and let me tell you, I know the work you've done, but I know it had to make you cry. It took a Bob Ehrlich, who some elders called a spear thrower for Newt Gingrich, to put money in the Coppin State. My black people my delegates been riding past that school my entire life. It took a white Republican to get that school the money they so deserved long, long ago.
Yeah, I think that our model here in Baltimore around politics has not been an empowerment model. And there are empowerment models, you know. In fact, because, and I have to give a lot of credit to Betty Jean Murphy, she was the backbone of my campaign and really understood some of the nuances of Baltimore politics. And she would always remind me, we are not going along that track. We're going to do this different. You know? And that's what you have to do. You just got to step out, take a chance, and people will definitely try to sabotage you. When I was first elected, there was definitely a move on to sabotage. But because there were some people in my corner because they believed in me, and some of them were white women who at the end said, look, Salima, we're going to have to soften you up if you think you're going to get those middle-class people in the 40th district. They are not going to take you unless you do something to soften up your image. Well, I wasn't going to change, so they said, well, we're going to send a letter from your mother and tell them so that they can see who you are from a mother's perspective, and that will soften you up. You know?
We got to do another part to this show. I don't want to hold you up, but I do have one request, and that's for the Reverend to take us home in prayer. Is that all right, Reverend?
Definitely. Yes. Thank you. Let us pray. creative and holy, righteous and good, everlasting and almighty Father, we come this day to say thank you for the day. Thank you for the blessing. Thank you for Doni. Thank you for Salima. Thank you for the waiting audience. Thank you for those who were here and attain. Those, dear God, who will hear and even smirk. Dear God, let them hear with hearts open and minds open to receive and to move forward, not just personally, but for us. God, we thank you for this opportunity in this day. We ask that you bless us as we move forward and go about our way, loving your people, trusting your people, and using your strength and your guidance to push forward. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen and amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Doni. We so appreciate you.
Any final thoughts, Mama Salima?
Donna, thank you so much.
Yeah, this was a great opportunity. And the next time we're going to bring back a new face.
Yes.
You must come back. Please come back. And we welcome you. And again, I thank Georgia Gosley. She's been a big sister to me for a while. She is a perfectionist.
Yes.
Yes, she is.
But she ain't sitting in no long meeting.
We'll let her know. We'll let her know.
Yeah.
She did call. She did text in to at 9:00 sharp because she can't wait. I mean,
she told me she don't do 9 a.m. interviews. I better.
She waited to are you still on? Thank you.
You have made our day. Thank you. Thank you, Queens.
Thank you.
God bless. And down tomorrow, do your day and everything will follow. Nothing to it but to do it. I got to do it regardless of how I feel. I am somebody. I am my brother's keeper. Good morning, world.
Brother's keeper.
Good morning.